Hi, everybody, and welcome to my podcast. I'm here today with my good friend, Derrick Jones, physician's associate and mindfulness meditation teacher. And we've done a previous podcast on which you could find on my YouTube and Spotify called A Full Understanding of Meditation. But today I'm here with Derrick, and we're going to be discussing creativity and spirituality and how the two are kind of intertwined. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Mhm. And thank you for having me, Alex. Thank you, everyone listening.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does creativity look like in your life? Or what does the word even mean
Mm.
to you? Because the word can confuse us even sometimes too.
Yeah. In my life, I've been a writer for a long time. I found a lot of outlet through writing poetry and then eventually essays, but especially poetry is where I feel like I'm really able to attach to my creative side to
Okay.
whatever this creative landscape is. I also like to dabble in music, and over time, my poetry's kind of morphed into doing a lot of freestyle flowing or like rap, and letting the voice connect to the words and finding how it's different whenever it's through my body, through my voice in real time versus when I'm typing or writing away at a computer. So those are some of the ways I've explored it the most. And I'd say dancing too. I'm also love to dance. So yet another form of this. Where are these moves coming from? What is going on there? What is this creative force creating each new moment of art, of beauty, of whatever it is?
I love that I love the topic in the sense that I always thought that I was not creative
Mm,
because I wasn't an artist or something, because I couldn't draw good, because I couldn't really come up with things in that type of fashion. Um and I also run into a lot of other people who think they aren't creative for those reasons. But then somebody or something I read got me to expand my view of creativity and to see that actually I'm an extremely creative person. It's just in different outlets that I express myself, such as what you've mentioned. So I think getting people to see that we all have that inborn and innate creativity, whether we're allowing ourselves to express it or not. But it takes different forms. It doesn't mean that you have to be good at drawing pictures or something like that, which is what was always kind of how it was in my mind.
exactly. I feel like I had the same myth in my mind. I'm not creative. I'm not an artist. I'm not a dancer. For a long time, I told myself I couldn't dance. What an odd thing to say. Just moving the body. I'm always moving the body. So over time, I think a lot of maybe self criticism started to fall away from me, and a lot more curiosity, which maybe for me is one of the man. Curiosity is one of the best conduits for creativity. The more curious I can get, very similar to a meditation session. The more
Mhm.
curious I can get, the deeper I get into meditation, the more fulfilling, rewarding the meditation is. Same thing with creativity. If I'm trying to create something, I have to get into the state where I'm curious about what's going to come out of even myself. Because I wonder, Alex, if you, whenever you are doing anything creative, you know, what is it that, hmm, how to put this? Do you know what you're going to create, or is it more a process of discovery of finding out for yourself, or do you know right from the start everything's going to come out?
Hmm. That's a good question. I guess I would say in my creative outlets would be singing and chanting, even the creation of, even in the creation of podcasts or the creation of um writing, anything really. I think, I don't know, sometimes I have an intent for something, an intent of a practice I'm going to do, or sometimes, like when I shared with you earlier today how I was singing hallelujah in my bed last night and before I went
Mm,
to sleep. That was more spontaneous creativity. That was something that I felt just needed to come from my soul, not something that I had planned or even made rational sense to be doing at that time, but just something that was like
Mm,
innate, and needed to come through me, which I think in our society, sometimes we can stifle our creativity because it might not seem like it fits in with our daily life
mm,
schedule and process. Like, who's going to just start dancing in the middle of their house in the middle of the day? Some people do, but some people might want to, but they think that doesn't seem right. That doesn't make sense. Or what's the other people going to think? Um, because sometimes creativity looks
yeah, yeah.
weird, or it looks like putting yourself out there, or um expressing in ways that I feel like yoga poses are creative, and that's why I teach yoga at a treatment
Mm,
center, and some people are really afraid to do it because they've stifled their creativity for a long time, and that's like opening up like that is
mm,
a big expression that's like kind of could be scary sometimes or just seem inappropriate.
mm.
Yeah. Does that make
I
sense?
love that, especially wow. It does. I think about how sometimes we'll say someone's dancing like a madman, or whenever we, have when we're experiencing really good art, really creative things, something that bends your mind, opens your mind. We'll say that was crazy, that was insane. Which, because of, especially from the mental health perspective and my role in healthcare, I try to avoid those words. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm trying to stay away from those words just because they can create stigma around mental health. But there's a reason we say them. There's a reason we say that was crazy, that was insane. It's
Mm,
not rational, like you were saying, it's out of the rational mind. And I think you're really getting at why it is such a discovery process to, tap into everyone's innate creativity. And I think you said this earlier, and I agree. I think everyone has access to creativity. I don't think there's necessarily these are creatives, these are not, left brain, right brain. I think there's a whole continuum. There's absolutely a whole continuum here. And I think anyone can access creativity through some outlet. And like you said, there's many different ones, be that podcasting and being creative with our words and our thoughts and our ideas, being it art, being dancing. But one of the things that seems to come to mind when, or it seems to be a commonality with all these, is getting outside of that rational mind. And that's scary. At
mm,
least it's scary for me.
yeah.
I especially coming from Western medicine, I mean, it's reading from books. This has to make sense. There needs to be a randomly controlled trial that it was peer reviewed before I can ever say that this is the way something is, and guide someone, let's say in medicine, on what to do. Creativity is a little different. There's less responsibility. It's more playful than the rational mind often has to be or is. The rational mind maybe is more serious, more looking for an answer. And I think that's a little bit of why I asked that question, because whenever I'm starting any creative endeavor, if I just want to sing, I want to write a poem, I want to rap in the shower, I have to start with a sense of curiosity. I don't know. I don't have an entire, rap in my head that's about to come out. I can't look at it on a text document in my head. I'm
Yeah.
discovering it as I go, and that's scary. And it makes a lot of sense, especially in addiction. It's wonderful you're teaching. You're teaching in those, would you say, rehab facilities or recovery facilities, or recovery
Yes.
programs?
Yeah.
Nice.
One intensive like outpatient program, and then one like a men's halfway house.
Mm, I love that, and it seems like what you said made so much sense of why you would encounter people who are more maybe constricted, more afraid of going into those states because it is uncertain. So, especially if you've had any traumas in your past or any areas where you haven't been able to, let's say, maybe even trust yourself, then it's hard to go into those less ordered, less rational, less everyone will accept me states. It's almost like coming up and hugging someone instead of a handshake. For a lot of people, hugging is going to be just fine, but the handshake's very socially acceptable. Everyone knows that's like a safe thing. Maybe the handshake's a little bit like just not being creative, just kind of, going with what you know to be okay. maybe coming in with the hugs a little bit like, oh, I'm testing waters a bit. I'm being creative. And you don't know what'll come back. The other person might, they know not today, or they might give you the best hug of your life. And that's a little bit what creativity is like for me. Sometimes I open myself up and I don't get anything. I don't find, the creative outpouring that I wanted. But sometimes I'm blown away. I'm blown away by what comes out. I don't feel an ownership to it. Something exciting and new comes out of me, and that's why I'm so interested. That's why I love that we're being able to discuss this today, because I'm just fascinated about where is that coming from? Where is that coming from when you surprise yourself? Like maybe some of the people you work with who, I bet they surprise themselves, and who knows what from their past might come up, what from hopes for their future, or what about just how they're feeling right then might come up when it's given the space outside of those normal frameworks of this is how things have to be, and it's just given the freedom to express itself.
Yeah, the people I know from my experience, like with that yoga, the people that step beyond that fear and like beyond those boundaries always every single time have such a great experience of
Hmm.
opening because it's something that the soul wants to do. And ultimately, I
Mm,
mean, we all are creators. This whole universe is creation and we are it. So it all like we were all inherently made
mm,
to create, which is why we are here. In sense, it's just on the physical plane of more dense vibration, it seems that things take time to manifest, but someone who is the architect of a beautiful bridge or a beautiful building or a beautiful sculpture or work of art, that creativity is there from the beginning. It's like formed out of their thoughts and out of their soul. It just takes time on the material plane to shape it into forms that we can see and shape it into, existence. But we all have that um inborn nature, and like we said, it can be expressed in like in a million different ways. Because I think I used to say that I'm not creative, and like when I hear people say that now, I try to tell them like that they are, that it's just like I used to feel that way too. It's just seeing it differently. Um, but it's making me think almost, if we say that we're not creative, it kind of is like a
mm.
stifling of the spirit. It's like the mind kind of holding the spirit down, like saying like, no, that's not me. I'm not creative. So I guess it's kind of like shifting that paradigm to be able to see that you are and you can be, and it could take your unique expression, whether it's being a mom or at your office or whatever you're bringing your creativity to. Um, yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't want to come off as proselytizing here, like oh, you have to be creative or you're a bad person or anything like that. And I think a lot of us also might react to hearing about all the good about creativity if we have that I don't know, that myth in our mind that we're not creative. That can become a self-fulfilling prophecy so quickly. What we say, what we think has power, and so if we think we're not creative, we're not going to. When I thought I wasn't a dancer, guess what? I didn't dance. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to dance, and then I never found the joy of dancing until something shook that away, and I had the freedom, the space to explore. Oh, what's it like whenever I dance? And I found a lot of beauty there, and that's why while I would never I can never tell someone they need to be creative or they should be creative. I can just go from my experience where it's been one of the most powerful avenues for me to process life, to process my past, my traumas. Like I think of when I was working in healthcare as a primary care provider for 2.5 years in Portland. Sometimes I would leave the clinic after a really hard day, and there'd be so much trauma. It was a low income health center, a refugee intake center. So you might have refugees from Ukraine or from Afghanistan, Iraq. You'd have people who dealt with so much, and to hold all that inside is impossible. To see 20 patients a day and to just hold it But creativity for me has been this transmutation, this turning of an energy. Let's say some, the weight of the day. Oh, I should have done better. I could have done more. Oh, just the pain that people were feeling. And that energy, if I could find an outlet for it, again, an outlet, sometimes I can just be talking on the phone with someone. But for me, that's harder. I don't like to put things on other people as much. That's one of my own things I'm working with is sharing more openly. But if I can do that with myself, if I could just put on a freestyle, a beat and just start rapping, I would start with no intention really. I would start just rhyming and, doing something for myself, and what would come through eventually would be something maybe relating to the day, something cathartic, something that maybe got something out that I didn't have a way of expressing to myself. I didn't even know needed to get out because I was in such a clenched state. There's something about
Hmm.
entering into that playful state that's been so powerful for me. And that's true of dance as well. Instead of rigidly moving my body to an exercise routine or something, but instead giving myself the room to play and take off those shackles of this is what you do, this is acceptable, this isn't. Very similarly, I would find a physical freedom and a mental freedom because it's all connected. Mind, body, spirit, are all intertwined. There's no real way to separate them that I've found. And so the more I'm creative in one avenue, the more I feel integrated in mind, body, and spirit in a way that's just been shockingly healing, healthy, and that's I think one reason why I'm so passionate about it. And again, wouldn't prescribe it to everybody, but that's I want to clarify one reason why we're talking about this is because I found it to be so healing. And I imagine you maybe similarly. That's probably why you are doing work with recovery centers and people. I'm sure you've seen a lot of growth and healing and something beautiful that comes from having that space.
Yeah. Wow. That was a lot of good stuff. um, I do think so much healing can come through our creativity. Like so much can be released, and so much like energy that we're holding on to, so much karma, so many stuck things that I've seen during Kundalini yoga and teacher training, and very often in teacher training they would have us start dancing and jumping around in between things, and
Wow.
that was weird for me at first. 'Cause I never also considered myself a dancer. Like I remember when I first did like static dance in Utah, took me a while to get into it. And then when I totally just like surrendered to it, I was, whoa, this is crazy. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, we hold so much we can hold so much stuff that can be like released and put out. And it just the vision that comes to me when you're speaking is like somebody writing, and as they're writing, they're channeling. If we were able to see it astrally, like I could imagine you seeing colors that the person's channeling into their writing, creative
mm,
energy coming into, say, journaling, or even dark energy being released out through it. Um, but I could see when
mm,
people say the creative juices flowing, like that energy coming about, and yeah, how much healing we can get through stepping beyond those barriers of our mind, and a lot of it I think is just how we are structured and how our society is structured, and it's not any specific person's doing or
mm,
wrongdoing. It's just so structured in the way our minds are filtered and the way everything happens so quickly from one
mhm,
task to the next. It's hard to sometimes allow ourselves the time or the space for it, or we might just live so much in fight or flight mode that it's hard to get out of that into a more relaxed mode where we can let our creativity flow. I love that you brought up this subject because it really was something that I didn't know much of what could be said about, because it's always been a word for me that I originally felt like I didn't relate to. So I think that's why it's such a good subject, because we're not talking about something that I feel, oh, I know everything about creativity, I want to talk about it. It's something that I really have also struggled to understand.
All right, sorry about some Wi-Fi issues in the studio there for the cut. But no, what you were saying was really connecting, and while there's such a healing potential for creativity, I've been, especially these days, trying to think in um, both, I don't know how to describe this, maybe both directions. Whenever we talk about something that's, let's say, good for you in some way, we often think of it in the healing way, like healing, at least especially me in the healing profession. I often think about healing. Let's say, talk about mental health, doing some of your mental health. But there's a whole nother side to that coin. If we talk about healing as in like getting to somewhere like where we're good, where we're happy, where we're stable. There's this other side about like mental wealth. There's mental health, getting to stable, getting to good. There's mental wealth. How much more happy can we be? How much more loving? How much more creative? How much more connected, secure? So whenever I think of creativity, I've had a lot of healing from it. I've had a lot of catharsis and energetic clearing, feeling myself be lighter and better able to, let's say, go back to work the next day and help people, or to go home and not take out any of the stresses of the day on my loved ones. But there's this whole other side to creativity of connection, maybe connection to something higher than yourself, like a higher power, whatever your spiritual views might be. Connecting to other people, connecting to the world outside of you, connecting to the wonder in the world. So I really like that. For me, creativity has had both purposes, both um, utilities for me, where it's healed, but it's also then just shown me wonder and joy. So, like whenever I'm entering into, let's say, I've experienced this with dancing, and you mentioned surrender, which was I think what got me onto this. When I've really been able to surrender to, let's say, the flow, they call one, I like to flow. It's using just your body, or using something like a staff. There's fire flow where you can use like a staff that's on fire on the ends, or balls that are on fire, and you dance with a prop. Whenever I can surrender to that process, I have a little bit of process, maybe a little structure, like the ways in which I can move a staff, the ways in which I can move two or three balls or something attached to ropes. Having that little interplay, if I can surrender to it, I'm without fail surprised by what comes through when I actually surrender. For me, maybe because of the meditation training, that's often through the breath. That's often how I connect to my body. They say the breath is the bridge between the mind and the body. I really like that. So when I'm up in my thinking mind, trying to think, oh, am I going to look dumb? Am I going to burn myself? Is this silly? Is this dumb? Whatever critical thoughts might come through, that's in the mind. If I can sink into the breath, just sink into the body, and become curious about whatever will come through, surrender to that. I've done things that I didn't know I could do. That's where those self-limiting beliefs can be really interesting to note and to maybe bypass. I've surrendered into my breath and just had the most beautiful moves that I didn't know I could do come out of my body with, like, let's say, a flow staff. Or let's say with freestyling, I've had the cleverest rhymes that I sure didn't think of. I don't know who thought of them, but it wasn't me. I'd never thought of this before, like a word, some wordplay, something, but it just comes through. But it doesn't come through when I'm trying. That seems to be the paradox of it. And something I wanted to throw back to you, because I just find it so fun, is whenever I can really surrender. That's where I think that connection to spirituality comes in. Why I kind of mentioned that surrender, just surrendering to something outside of me, whatever that is. It's not letting it be me who does it. Something beautiful comes through. So often something beautiful comes through that I can't take ownership for. So yeah, that I just wanted to throw out, that connection, that way in which creativity can also not just heal us, but make us more whatever we want to be. And then also that way in which you can be so surprised. And maybe I'll throw it back with a question: where is that coming from? Where is it coming from when you surprise yourself? And can you think of any instances like that for you? But where's that coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really awesome. Well, I would say, just as the example of the greatest artists or the greatest musicians or the greatest composers all would say that they tune into this state of creative flow, or the greatest lecturers like Ramdas, where the universe just comes through them like a perfect flow state, a perfect harmony when one can surrender and get outside of oneself. And what was the question that you asked?
Yeah, where does that
Oh,
come
where does
from?
it
Let's
come
say
from?
When Ram Dass is speaking, where are the words coming from? When a dancer is just freestyling and
Yeah,
these moves are coming out, where are they coming from?
I think there's a creative intelligence that is everywhere and in everything. And if we can connect to that intuitively, we know everything. Intuitively, the composer of music knows the perfect notes and the perfect song. And intuitively, the lecturer has the perfect words because they've connected to that God part of ourselves that does without trying, that knows without trying, that could form things without
Mm,
having to deliberately say, I'm going to have to make an effort to form this. Um, like that part of ourselves that puts all the laws of the universe into being, the quantum physics and the mathematical laws that are inside of everything, that there's that part of flow or energy or being that
mm,
all of the people that we know as the greatest people in their fields of science or of anything have been able to kind of, even Albert Einstein said, I didn't come to my understanding of the laws of the universe through my
mm,
analytical mind. And he didn't even used to do experiments. He just would like tune in with this and then figure out how it all was because it's already there. Um, so that's what
mm,
I would say. And I love how you said the thing about the wealth instead of just
mm,
the healing, because I don't always like to use the healing words too much because
mm,
that's kind of what everyone talks about is like, oh, we need healing. We need healing. But what is beyond healing, like you're saying? Because we don't always just want to stay in the state of needing to be healed. We also want, well, like spiritual or mental wealth, abundance, growth, freedom, which is beyond even just needing to get better or needing to be healed. It's coming from a place of like already being there and then expressing outward our truth, our dharma, our way of being in the world that feels aligned.
yeah, exactly. I was looking through my notebook from my journal from the meditation retreat we were both at in Maui with because I remember there was some beautiful quote from Ram Dass around this where, if you're trying to heal someone, you're almost implying that this wasn't like disease. If you're trying to
Yes.
fix someone or something, then that thing is broken.
Yes.
And that's not how I view. As much as I like to help and heal or to fix things, I don't want to go
Yes.
on viewing the world as broken. And I don't view people
Yes.
as disease. Yeah, and I think what he offered, I always forget this last part, which is probably maybe the universe winking at me to take the lesson more at heart. But I think what he says is when you serve someone, you just serve, that you're not putting something onto them, that you're not saying that they're broken or they're in need of fixing, they're in need of healing, but instead just serve. He would say, "Love, serve, remember." Has always been so powerful for me, and so I really like what you're saying, and that's why I brought up that, yeah, mental wealth mindset, because it's so powerful for kind of getting out of victim narratives, getting out of these ways in which we can do disservice to ourselves and to others instead of doing service, instead of serving ourselves, serving others from a non-judgmental, from a really clear, loving space. So yeah, and that's where creativity, that playful space, I think, is just so conducive to that. I think we all need space for play. Children get recess, children have playrooms, there's a lot of benefit to seeing through the eyes of a child. I try to do that whenever I can. I try to come into my meditation, even though I've been meditating daily for 7 years now. I try to come in. I'm not always successful at this, but I try to come in with utter curiosity. What's the breath going to be like today? What is my body going to feel like today? What's my mind going to be like today? And it always is different. It truly is. This world's always changing. So when I can come in with that childlike wonder, I feel so much better. I feel so much more connected. I feel so much more at peace. And I think those playful spaces, places without that, maybe the societal, you were mentioning this kind of societal construct, societal pressures, whether they're actually being imposed on us at that moment or we're just putting them on ourselves. I think that's maybe more common, is we just put them on ourselves. But if we can find a playful space, if I can be in the shower and be like, I'm not doing anything productive for 20 minutes, I'm just going to freestyle. If I can go out in the backyard and dance and listen to good music and not have to get anything from it, not have to look for approval or do something good or bad, it's in those playful spaces that I find the most freedom, and that truly the best products actually come out. It's kind of it's a little bit paradoxical. You're really trying to get the thing, you're not going to get it. It's as soon as you give up trying, if you stop trying, that you get exactly what you wanted. And that's what we
Oh,
were talking about
yeah.
with connection. Yeah. It's beautiful. That's what we were talking about with connection, though, to the spirituality. Where does it come from, right? And it's when we don't try that something fills it in. Something fills it in. Hmm. I like
Yeah,
what you said about Einstein. I was, well, I was going to connect it to Einstein. I like what you said about that, the genius, and him saying that, it wasn't whenever he was doing the math. It was whenever he was just tuning in. I've seen that before too. And I wanted to say that we're painting a beautiful picture here, and I think it's true. I believe in miracles. I believe in sudden insight, eureka moments, like maybe Einstein had, and like
Mhm.
I've had with dance or other things. And I ask, where is it coming from? And maybe the best answer is the universe, something like that. But there is another part of this where, for most of us are not always in genius mode, even though I think we all have access to that genius. We're not always in stunning insight mode. So there is a part of preparation too. I don't want to just paint over that. If I didn't spend some time writing poetry and rapping and learning a little bit about, let's say, structure of rap, then what's going to come out probably isn't going to be as good each time. If I didn't learn the fundamentals of moving my body, if I didn't, let's say, do a yoga course where I saw something about how my body moves, or I didn't learn the fundamentals of dancing with a flow stab and a certain pattern that is natural, and learn and practice a little bit, what would come through probably isn't going to be as beautiful. I might still have those eureka moments. I might still have absolute joyous creativity, but there is a meeting. I feel like you might have a better quote here than me. You're great with quotes, but there's something about I don't know if it's God or the universe meeting you where you're at, how you're met where you're at. What you give is what you get often, and so there's something about preparation here as well, that we can prepare to and lay the ground for these states to come more naturally, to flow more easily, to get into flow. There's preparation and then there's surrender. And that's how I was taught to get into the seat as a meditation teacher. Prepare, read your books, know what you're going to maybe talk about somewhat in a session, know a little bit about what you're going to give a Dharma talk on, know the posture and how someone can get in the posture, know some frequent, we ask questions around meditation. But once you're there, once you're in a class and you ring that bell and you take your seat as, and you start meditating and you become a meditation instructor, surrender to the flow, be in the moment. Don't keep going back to that analytical mind. It's like, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z in this order, or it won't work out. That was a great teaching I got from my meditation course through Dharma Moon. They a wonderful job with this of prepare, but then surrender. And I think that goes so well with these states that we're talking about. It goes so well with play. You prepare, but then you surrender. Prepare, surrender.
Yeah, that's really perfectly exactly what it is, because if you don't have the practice and the preparation, then you'll never even be able to get to that point of that flow or that surrender. Um so it takes that to be able to get to the place where then you can let go and become a part of the flow. And that there's a ton to be said about that. I couldn't have said it better. That's perfect. Because a lot of people would love to get creative, or to connect, and uh feel like they can't, maybe in this moment. And that's where that first part of it would come in, what you're saying. That's where the practice and the learning and the cultivation of whatever art form or practice would start. And then at the zenith, at the peak of it, then it just becomes surrender. Then it just becomes flow. I remember when I used to teach kids sports from ages 2 to 6. And after a while of doing it, it was really young, 20 months to 6 years old. It just became like dharma. It just became flow. I would teach these 45-minute classes
Mm,
to like 5 or 10 kids, and I had learned so much about the games we were supposed to play and this and that. And then it came out on the other side where it was like I didn't have to do anything, and it just was perfect flow. Um, I think that ultimately, well, that was beautiful what you said, that we just have to encourage ourselves and one another to trust our heart, like to trust
mm,
our instincts, to realize that there is more than just the analytical way of seeing, and we can connect to that. And even uh very, very mindful and spiritual people that I know still have a huge challenges with doubt, and huge challenges with trust, with God or guru, with themselves, with the validity of the experiences they're having, or with the validity of the insights that they're having. Um,
mhm,
and Buddha said that one of the five hindrances that all humans have is doubt. So like we can't forget about
mm,
how big of a role doubt can play, and it really can. The mind's always like feeding in with the doubt. And in my own practices, I've done a very good job of getting beyond that, but like it's taken a lot of time, and it has, and a lot of faith, and it hasn't been easy. So I think working with doubt is a
mm.
really important part. Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely. Work with where we are. Let's meet ourselves where we're at. Whether the universe is going to meet us where we're at or not, let's meet ourselves where we're at. And I love that doubt is one of those innate qualities, one of the five hindrances, one of those parts of human existence that's going to be there. So, how do we combat doubt or work with doubt? Maybe to be less confrontational. How do we work with doubt? Let's practice some. Let's get a little form. Let's find our safe space, a place where we're just being creative just for ourselves. Then maybe we can be creative around others. Because just because you doubt yourself, if you're the only audience, then yeah, you waste a little bit of time trying your creative outlet, whatever. If it's drawing, if it's dancing, if it's writing, if it's singing, what's the harm, right? So maybe we can work with doubt by decreasing those barriers. If we're afraid of being embarrassed by others, don't do it in front of others first. That's where practice comes in. If we're afraid of disappointing ourselves, maybe we can be a little kinder to ourselves and have no expectations, because that doubt's going to be there. But I think that's why that little bit of preparation can go so long, so far, can take us so far to do a little bit of let's watch the YouTube tutorial. I'm someone who will try to rush ahead a little bit too quickly. I'll get so excited about something I want to learn it. I'll skip the tutorials. I'm like, no, I can do this. I've seen people do it. And that's where you do get some of those beautiful insights. There's something great about not having any structure and letting yourself out there and seeing what comes. That's where you maybe learn even more about yourself. But for me, I often have to find freedom within form. That's what I think. I have very structured mind and maybe a lot of doubt. I need some form. Okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes, that in this creative space, and I'm going to only use X, Y, and Z. Maybe I'll just use this rhyme scheme. You know, you'd say if you were writing poetry, maybe I'll just use. That's actually a great one. Poetry is a great example for this because there are certain rhyme schemes that you can just follow, and that for me is that finding freedom within form. If you just have a blank sheet of paper in front of you, that can be the most intimidating thing in the world. You can do anything.
Mm.
You could write an A B rhyme scheme. You could do A B B A. You could do a limerick. You could draw in a spiral until you had a perfectly beautiful spiraling calligraphy poem. Think of all the things you can do with a blank sheet of paper. But if I simplify it and I'm saying I'm going to write a haiku, I write a haiku, 5 7 5, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. That limitation actually gives me access to more freedom. Those
Yeah.
constraints actually give me the ability to tap into that creativity. And it's a paradox. It's a paradox. Wait, you're restraining yourself and then you're more free? Yes, as far
Yes.
as I can tell. That's something I found again and again. I found again and again. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You can be
So that's
free
maybe one way we can
within
combat
it.
doubt.
Yes, that's beautiful. You can be free within it. And the last thing I wanted to say that reminded me of is on Audible there's a thing called the Great Courses, and I've listened a couple times to a quantum
Mm.
physics course, and I forgot the name of the man, or it's not on just quantum physics, but it's like all of that. And actually, let me see if I could find it real quick so I can tell us what it is. So it's called Einstein's Relativity and the Quantum Revolution, and it's on the Great Courses.
Oh,
And
wow.
the guy who does it, uh, obviously has so much knowledge. He's obviously studied probably extremely extensively, so much insight, but the way he does it is it a complete state of flow. You can feel that it's
Mm.
all just, he's not doing the talks or the lectures. It's like he's embodied them and he just is that. Like he's a representation of that current of energy and it just comes right through him. It just is him and you can hear it and it's just beautiful. And it's like he can go on forever. And it's not it's both. It's like what you just said. Like he, of course, had done tons of preparation to get there, but now he's just surrendered and he's just embodied that universal energy of that specific field, and that just is what he is now. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. There's
And
something so attractive about that flow. There's something so magnetic about it because it becomes truth in a way. You know, they say write what you know. Maybe they could also say speak what you know. And it's amazing whenever people do develop that kind of knowledge in an area and then have the ability to just surrender, that I think so much truth comes out. And I would bet even that lecturer is surprised by some of what comes out sometimes. Maybe a metaphor pops out of nowhere, even if
mhm.
he's not maybe in the lecture, having an epiphany about some new law of quantum physics. He's probably learning more about relating to others himself. He's probably surprising himself in a way of expressing something or a way in which something is like something else because of that. So even when someone has a really deep knowledge, they really get something, they're, I think, still surprising themselves. And that to go on the haikus a little bit more,
Mhm.
there was something that's come through with me that I've never heard this anywhere else, but I really like how it came through, and it really resonated with me. For a while, when I was learning about the chakra system, I was seeing numbers differently. You know, we have 7 chakras, 1 through 7, going up the spine. And once I saw those, I got interested in different numbers, and I would just kind of play around with their significance to the different chakras if I saw a number somewhere. One area I saw that was with the structure of haikus. Wait, why is it
Mm.
5 7 5? Who decided that that was the structure, and why is this something, regardless of who decided it or where it came? Why is it something we've went back to for I think thousands of years? And he looked that up, but I believe this is an ancient form. Why 5 7 5? So one way I played around with it was with the chakra system, and it really resonated with me. What came through? Just playing with it. 575. Five is the throat chakra, represented by blue lights, and
Mm.
in a blue color. Um, Five is your self-expression, truth, your voice, finding your voice. Um, Seven, the crown, that's your connection to the universe, represented by the color purple. And it's beautiful. It's merging with the universe, a connection to God, everyone else on earth, love, whatever you can connect to openly. And then five again, throat chakra. How I've used that, and I've actually used it to try to write some haikus in this way, was five. Start with saying something you know. Speak for yourself. Write what you know. Say what you know. Seven, the universe. Ask a question. You just said something. What's the universe's response? Maybe listen for an answer from whatever is around you. Maybe that can be the seven syllables. And then from there, you just heard something from the universe and you wrote it down. You channeled it. Then you write again from what you know, what you took from that. 575, from throat to universe
Yeah.
back to throat. Yeah. So amazing things you can do when you just play around with creativity and you
That's
get
beautiful.
curious. That that came through and it really resonates with me. And I love that. And with finding freedom in form, I just came back to it again and again. And I imagine many listeners might feel the same. It's just so easy to get overwhelmed by the not million, infinite possibilities in every moment when you say, I want to create something. I can create a business. I can create a job. I can create a child. I have the ability to be part of the creation of a child. We can create anything. It's amazing. So how do we actually harness that ability with some kind of constraint, some kind of form? And I really think that helps get through that doubt, get through that critic, get through all those little forces and let us tap into that innate creativity that I do think is all around, that is inside of each of us, and find either health, wealth, or just some fun. Honestly, you can't really go wrong when we're creating. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yes. Thank you. That was awesome.
Mm,
um,
mm. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, I think I just wanted to say like things like with the haiku that you explained, people have to realize, we have to realize that the reason they stick around in society is because they really have deep dharmic meaning, deep truth, such as why the haikus are set up that way, or why people have been worshiping a certain god for so many thousands of
Mm,
years, or why it doesn't just happen by mistake that these things uh, are there. They're inherent in the subconscious of people and of the earth, and they do connect with law. So the reason the haiku is set up that way is probably for the reasons you said. It's not just by mistake. There, for it to continue in that way for all these thousands of years, there's a deep truth that's like conveyed through that artistic form. Side note, but that's just what it made me think of. But anyways,
mm.
thank you so much. That was
Welcome.
wonderful. Is there anything you wanted to say to us before we finish?
Mm, mm. I don't think so. I really appreciate the space, this creative space for um, for both of us to explore. We don't know what we're going to say. We don't know what's going to come through. So I appreciate you making the space. That's something I really admire about you and so many other wonderful people I see in communities. Just making space for people, be it the people you work with, be it me in this podcast, making space of loving acceptance where people feel the freedom to play and to create. So I just want to thank you for that,
Yes.
and yeah, just acknowledge that space that you're making, that you make for so many.
Thank you.